Have you a heart that's weary, tending a load of care? Are you a soul that's seeking rest from the burden you bear? Do you know my Jesus? Do you know my friend? Have you heard He loves you, and that He will abide till the end? Where is your heart, O pilgrim? What does your light reveal? Who is your call for comfort when naught but sorrow you feel? Do you know my Jesus? Do you know my friend? Have you heard He loves you, and that He will abide till the end? Who knows your disappointment? Who is each time you cry? Who understands your heartaches? Who dries the tears from your eyes? Do you know my Jesus? Do you know my friend? Have you heard how He loves you, and that He will abide till the end?
All right, tonight we are in lesson number 109. It is a continuation of where we were studying last week in John 13. This week it picks up in verses 21 to 38. We are talking about the betrayal of Judas and Peter's denial leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus. And so does somebody have the page number right off if somebody needs? 431. This also is coming from, some of it will be coming from Matthew 26, 21 to 25, 31 to 35, Mark 14, 18 to 21, 27 to 31, and Luke 22, 21, 23, and then 31 to 38. But it is basically a continuation of the events that took place there following Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And so as we began, it says, and when Jesus had thus said, and that has to do with what we were looking at in the lesson preceding that last week, Jesus said to them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receiveth whomever I send receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. That was the end of the lesson as we were talking about Jesus washing the disciples' feet, as well as speaking to them about the lesson of servitude. And so after Jesus had spoke about these things, and as they were sitting there eating, he was troubled in the spirit, and Jesus testified and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me, even he that eateth with me. But behold, the hand of him that betrayeth me is with me on the table. Now, as we mentioned last week, the painting that most of us see as the Last Supper has very little to do with the reality of what the Last Supper was. Whether a table was involved, Jesus here talks about it being on the table. And so rather than being a high table with chairs all the way around it like people see or behind it, it was more a lower table, much like we think of as a coffee table, or if you've seen some of the Japanese movies, I'm sure over the years, programs, you will see those low tables that they put the food on, and they have cushions around the table for people to sit on. And it was customary to kind of lay on one's side where they could reach up on the table and get various things to eat. And they would sit or recline around the table. That's what made it easier for Jesus to be able to wash and wipe and dry the feet of the disciples. But part of his letting them know, and by the writers giving these things to us, lets us also know that Jesus was quite aware of what was going on. I think all along, as we've been studying this, it should be clear that Jesus knew ultimately that he would end up in Jerusalem to be betrayed and to be crucified. And there was a time that he kept referring to was not come, but he has now come to that time. And so that they might know and that they might understand and that they might believe his ability to know and to understand the events before they even happened, Jesus says that the hand of him that betrayeth me is with me on the table. And so primarily there may have been the 12 apostles. Some others may have been around that night also. But Jesus, those who were the closest to him sitting around the table, he was acknowledging that in essence one of the 12 that was there sitting at the table would betray him. Now, this is something new in the thought process. Jesus had mentioned that he would be betrayed to the chief priests and all of those events that would ultimately lead up to his crucifixion. He had spoken about those things, but he had never specifically said that I'm aware of that one of the 12 that he had chosen as disciples would betray him in such a clear way as he does here in this study this evening. The idea in using the word betrayed pretty much says everything about Judas. As I have said, there are those who try to make Judas look better than what he was. They have, and I'm not going to go into great detail about that, but there are theologians who have said, well, maybe Judas had honorable reasons for doing what he did to try to get Jesus to again, make a public stand, take a public stand to help bring about the kingdom, to set off what they perceived would be the war between them, the Romans, as the Messiah went forth to conquer. But it's clear that Jesus felt that what Judas was going to do was a betrayal. It wasn't a favor. Judas and the thoughts of Judas has always been a difficult thing for some people to wrap their minds around. Jesus was on the mountain at night when he prayed and was in prayer all night, it seems, before he chose the 12 apostles. And he included Judas, knowing that Judas would ultimately betray him. And that has caused a lot of people to say, well, why did Jesus pick Judas if he knew that Judas would betray him? Again, he gave him an opportunity the same that he gave to everybody else. He showed a great deal of trust in him, in that he was the keeper of the community treasury. And so he included him in everything that pretty much they did, with the exception, again, of the Mount of Transfiguration and a few other things. Judas was there just like the rest. And so he was given the same opportunities to be faithful to God. He was not made to do anything. And so while I'm sure all along the way it was a difficult thing to contemplate, and Jesus mentions, or it is mentioned here, that he was troubled in the spirit. Jesus was troubled in the spirit. Not just, some people say, well, he began to think about the crucifixion and all of that. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But Jesus knew what the outcome of the crucifixion was going to be. And he knew ultimately that that would be a positive thing. But Jesus also knew what the outcome of Judas was going to be, and that wasn't going to be a positive thing. And it's one thing to know what he's thinking and what he's doing along the way, but it's another thing to know that Judas is running out of time. That the decisions that he has made and the decisions he will continue to make has charted a course. And the interesting thing is, we again have evidence that we have free will. We do what we do. We choose what we choose. Jesus chose 12, and one of them would betray him. Knowing that doesn't change the fact that he made him do that. He just knew he was going to do it. Just like the denial of Peter that Jesus will also speak of, he did not make Peter deny him. He just knew about it. He knew that the outcome of Peter's denial would be different from what he referred to here as the betrayal of Judas. Peter repented and was present on the day of Pentecost to preach the first recorded gospel lesson. Judas, saying that Jesus was condemned and knew he was the one who did it, filled with grief and remorse and whatever else, went and hung himself. And so Peter chose to do what he did. He wept bitterly after his betrayal, but that caused him to think about his relationship with Christ. And so far as I can tell, after that point, we don't have much more denial. Peter was very stern and very straightforward in his supporting Jesus and the gospel. And so if you had 12 people that you have been eating with, that you have, as we would think of today, camped out constantly with along the way, have been up through the nights, you've been with him in these various campaigns and trips that we have seen him make through Judea and Galilee, Samaria. You've been with him for 3.5 years. And then all of a sudden, Jesus, speaking to them, says, one of you who's right here, right now, not somebody somewhere, but one of you who's right here, right now, one of my closest associates and friends is going to betray me and is sitting here at the table tonight with us. And the disciples looked one on another, doubting of whom he spake. It would seem that whatever Judas had been doing, and we've seen that he was taking from the treasury, he was a thief. When that came to be known and fully understood, we not certain, but the disciples were looking at one another. These are people that, he doesn't say at this point who it is. And so you've got Peter and Andrew and James and John. These people had been fishermen together. Their families had been fishermen together. These men had known each other, perhaps from their earliest childhood. And as they entered into the fishing business of their fathers. And some of these others along the way had become associates of theirs, either prior to that or along the way. And so it's hard for them to just look across and around the table at everybody that was sitting there and to pick out one and say, this is the one that's going to do it. So it seems that they all at least appeared to be very devoted to the things of Jesus. And so it was hard for them to comprehend. And they looked at one another, doubting of whom he spake. They had no idea. They didn't all automatically come to the fact that Judas is a sneaky one. It's probably him. And so they were looking at each other and they didn't know. Now, the interesting thing is Judas knew. And while all the eyes of the table were looking around at one another, you have to wonder what Judas was thinking, how he was reacting to those things. And while they doubted whom he spake of, they began to be exceedingly sorrowful. How can somebody do this? How could one of our very closest associates who has been with us through all these things that we have experienced? And so it began to make them sorrowful that Jesus would even think that one of those would betray him. And so we're told they began to question among themselves which one of them it was that should do a such thing. Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? They were interested in trying to figure out. And so, they were questioning among themselves who perhaps it might be. And as they were doing that, they began to say unto him one by one, that is, every one of them, Is it I, Lord? Nobody was going to volunteer, apparently, and none of them had a clear answer. And the record says that they all began to ask. It troubled them, not only, in the sense that one of them would do it, but seeing how he was being very, what we think of as close-lipped about it, they were concerned, is it going to be me? I don't want to be the one that does. I don't want to be the one that betrays you. Is it going to be me? And so they began to stop looking around the table and began to look at themselves and ask Jesus if indeed it was them. And he answered and said unto them, It is one of the 12. He that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. Brother McGarvey mentions here that here says the Oriental custom, when people were there at the table eating, they would place bowls with the soup or the liquid or whatever in several bowls at the table, so that those who were sitting, rather than each person getting today what we would think of as a soup bowl, they would place a bowl there on the table with whatever it was going to have in it, whatever the what I would call a soup or porridge, those kind of things are, some liquid type food. And those who were eating then would take bread and they would break it off into pieces, and they would dip the bread in the dish and sop up, just like here in Appalachia, I need another one of them our biscuits so I can sop up all that gravy. I don't want to leave no gravy on the plate. So the sop is not the bowl, and it's not the liquid that was in the bowl, but it is the process of taking a piece of bread, a morsel. The word sop means morsel. And so they would take a morsel, a piece of the bread, and dip it in that, primarily to soften it. And at this time, we're talking about a period of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so that means that we're looking at stuff like we use or used to use on the communion table, the matzah bread without any leavening. And so you have a hard bread. And so to make it more palatable and to be able to eat it better, they would break off a piece and dip it in some type of liquid. Traditionally, there weren't such things as knives and forks and spoons. I know this kind of sounds for some pretty rough, but if there was meat and it was presented there, you pretty much just reached up with your hand and yanked off a chunk of meat and you ate it. That way, there wasn't no fancy utensils and all that. You ate with your hands, with your fingers. And so they would sop up the liquid, and whatever was in there, whether it was meat or if it was vegetables or whatever, then they would again eat that, some with their fingers, some with the bread or whatever they were using. And so he tells them, as they're questioning among themselves, and says, he that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. The word for dipped or dippeth there is a form of the word that we are familiar with, baptize. The word baptize means to dip or submerge. And so they were dipping, they were submerging the bread in the dish and in the bowl. And so there is a form thereof of the word we're familiar with as to baptize. They were dipping the bread in there, immersing it in the liquid and absorbing or soaking up the liquid which was there. And so the same that was there, the same shall betray me. So Jesus has first spoken to the 12 that one of them, which is there at the table, would betray him. And now he says, he brings it down some. He brings it from 12 down to 3 or 4 that would be using the bowl that he has there in front of him, because he who dippeth his hand with me in the dish, someone who is dipping out of the dish. And so that if they weren't using the same dish or bowl that Jesus was, that excluded them. And so he reduces it down to 3 or 4 that would have been there. He says, for the Son of Man goeth as it has been determined, even as it is written of him, by whom unto that man, through whom the Son of Man is, but woe unto that man through whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Good word for that man if he had not been born. And so now we have reduced it down to 3 or 4, probably about 3, because if there was 4 people using the dish, Jesus was one of them, so that left the 3. John was leaning on the Lord's breast, and so we know that he was there, and Judas was sopping up with the bread with Jesus, so we know he was there. And it does mention about Peter. I don't know whether he was there or not. I've, over the years, heard various people try to figure out who was sitting where around the table. I'm not going to go into all of that, but Jesus tells us that not only was he troubled about the one who would betray him, but he goes on to say that it would be better for that individual to have not been born. Now that's Jesus' statement about Judas. It would have been better for him not to have been born. And so we can pretty much see what the end result of Judas' betrayal and hanging himself, it didn't have a good outcome. Anytime that you speak in such terms as you'd be better off never to have been born, that's a pretty sorry state. And for Jesus to make that statement, it would have just been better off if there'd never been a Judas. But knowing these things, Judas nonetheless was born, and he lived his life, and he made his choices. One of those was to betray Jesus. The other was to hang himself. And there are many people in life who exercise poor judgment, and the end result of their life, we could all say it would be better off if they'd never been born. And we have people who, again, never obey the gospel. We have people who become alcoholics. They suffer from drug addiction. They become involved in so many sins. And somewhere along the way, their time runs out. And from a standpoint of knowing judgment and eternity, we could say it would be better off that they'd never been born. if they lived their life the way they did as their choice. Well, you don't understand. They didn't mean to be an alcoholic. They didn't mean to be a drug addict. They didn't mean to do this. They didn't mean to do that. It's not always the fact that we just purposely make a choice to go neck deep into trouble. It starts by poor decisions, a small turn, a small decision, another decision, and the end result of that is a life that it would be better off that it not have been lived. And so it was with Judas. I believe Judas entered with the 12, with the same perspective, with the same opportunities. And so Jesus allowed him. The fact that Jesus knew what the end result was going to be, this is the hard thing. As a preacher, as a Christian, as a friend, I don't know what the future holds for myself as well as anybody else. And we always want to think the best, do the best, strive to get others to be their best. They're not all going to make it. But I don't know that. I don't know what the future holds. But Jesus, on the other hand, did. And he gave the opportunities. People made their choices along the way. And it was troubling. It would be troubling in the spirit as, for me, from my standpoint as a preacher, if every person I looked at, I knew they're going to be lost. It would be difficult to see people sitting in the pews, people who call themselves Christians, and to be able to look at them and know that sadly how their life was going to end. And that no matter how much you talk to them and how many lessons you presented, they're going to make some bad decisions that's going to cost them their soul. I'm glad God doesn't give us that kind of insight. And so without that type of insight, as Christians, the best we can do is believe that as long as there is life, there's hope. And as long as we have the ability to talk to somebody, perhaps we can convince them, saint, sinner, whatever, to live a life faithful to God. Anything down through that verse? Then, after having narrowed it down, he dipped in the sop, and he taketh and giveth it to Judas. And so that pretty much narrowed it all the way down. And Judas, who betrayed him, answered and said, Is it I, Rabbi? He said unto him, Thou hast said. Now, what that actually means in modern day English is you have said correctly. We might say today, you hit the nail on the head. It's interesting that Judas refers to Jesus as Rabbi. By Rabbi, he refers to him as my teacher. And so he refers to Jesus still by the title of teacher as him being a disciple, even though he has set himself apart in a way from being in such a relationship. Judas is really no longer interested in Jesus as his teacher, or else he would not have done the things that he did. And so after Jesus gave him the bread, which had been dipped, we're talked about, then entered Satan into him. And in that sense, when he knew that it was pretty much not a secret anymore, he left. Jesus told him what he did do quickly, and he left, and no one really still understood what he meant by all of that. But at this point, being confronted by Jesus, Judas had one last chance. He called him rabbi. He had one last chance to reveal the plans that he had set in motion, and to tell Jesus that rather than going to the Garden of Gethsemane tonight, he should go to Bethany to the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, or he should go somewhere else. But he chose not to reveal any of the plans that he had made. And Jesus told him, some, we're told, thought because Judas had the bag, the purse, the community treasury, that Jesus said unto him, buy what things we have need of for the feast. That he was sending him out for some more supplies for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. Customary to give to the poor, the needy, at these high festival days and holy days. Not everyone had the ability to purchase and pay and have the things necessary, so they assumed that maybe that he had sent him out. It's interesting, they seem to still think that he was going to amount to something good, that they didn't really still think about him as being the one that was betraying Jesus. And when therefore he was gone out, Jesus said, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him, and God shall glorify him in himself, and straightway shall he glorify him, talking about the coming crucifixion. Jesus went on then, once Judas was gone, to say, little children, yet a little while I am with you. Ye shall seek me. And as I said unto the Jews, that is the Jewish leaders, whither I go, ye cannot come. So now I say unto you, that you cannot come with me now. A new commandment I give unto you. Now it's interesting, this commandment was not given until Judas had left. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, if you have love one to another. Judas was filled with envy and greed and other things. The rest, Jesus knew that if they would and they could follow this commandment, things would end much better for them. Then said Jesus unto them, all ye shall be offended in me this night. For it is written, Zechariah 13:7, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. Howbeit, after I am raised up, I will go before you into Galilee. Jesus talks about the result of the betrayal of Judas, that during the arrest of Jesus, many would flee, that they would be scattered. It had been prophesied. They would all be offended. They would be, again, deniers, if you want to say, of Jesus. They would be scared. They would be afraid for the events which were going to follow. And of course, Simon Peter speaks up and said, Lord, whither goest thou? Jesus said, whither I go, thou cannot follow now, but thou shalt follow afterwards. Peter said unto him, Lord, why cannot I follow thee even now? I will lay down my life for thee. Jesus answered, Wilt thou lay down thy life for me? Simon, Simon, behold, Satan asked to have you, that he might sift you as wheat. But I made supplication for thee, that thy faith fail not. And do thou, when thou hast turned again, establish thy brethren. And he said unto him, Lord, with thee I am ready to go both to prison and to death. But Peter answered and said unto him, Although all shall be offended in thee, yet will not I will never be offended. Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, or I tell you, Peter, that thou today, even this night, before the cock crow, here it says twice, others say thrice, 3 times, some say just the cock crows, thou shalt deny me. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, the cock shall not crow this day until thou hast denied me thrice, or 3 times. But Peter spake exceedingly vehemently, saying unto him, Even if I must die with thee, I will not deny thee. And in like manner also said all of the disciples. However, none of them were ultimately to live up to that. Now, I know that Peter was willing to fight, and Jesus stopped him, but once he stopped him and he saw that he was betrayed and that he was delivered over, Peter fled just like everybody else. And he said to them, When I sent you forth without purse and wallet, shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said, Nothing. And he said unto him, But now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise a wallet, and he that hath none, let him sell his cloak and buy a sword. For I say unto you, that which is written must be fulfilled in me. And he was reckoned with transgressors, for that which concerneth me hath fulfillment. And they said, Lord, behold, here are 2 swords. And he said unto them, It is enough. Things were going to get a little bit out of hand in the next few days. People would deny Jesus. We see even on the Sunday when Jesus had raised from the dead that they were clustered together in the one place with all the doors locked and bolted and the shutters closed out of fear that the Jewish leaders were coming after them. The intent, I believe, of the dealing with the sword was not that Peter would cut off the ear of the high priest's servant, but it was more of a security blanket for them. That when Jesus was betrayed, when Jesus was turned over, when the events of Jesus' crucifixion would take place, they could have some feeling of security in having some type of weapons, some type of finances, money, all of that, until Jesus could fully return and be with them. If I have any questions or comments down through the lesson tonight? All right, our time is up, so we'll pick up with the next lesson, Lord willing, next week. Thank you for your attention, your comments. If you would, open your songbooks to the song at the top of the board there, 344.
Yes.
We're going to use that tonight. We'll sing one verse by way of invitation. If you're here tonight in need of the prayers of the church, you need to make something known or request, you're welcome to come forward and make those things known.
In closing this evening, we wish to thank you again for spending your time in study with us. We hope the lesson has been uplifting and motivational. We encourage you to return again for our next lesson. Until then, may we invite you to visit our website. You will find many study opportunities. Our resource page has links to the Gospel Broadcasting Network, a 24/7 station with many great Christian programs and speakers. In Search of the Lord's Way, with Brother Phil Sanders. We have 2 links for Bibles and downloadable software. If you are looking to really expand your knowledge, perhaps you might like to try World Video Bible School, a college-level learning site free of charge. So, until next time, may God bless and keep you in His care as we walk together in His truth. And remember, as always, the churches of Christ salute you.